Welcome, everybody. I'm Caitlin Martin. This is
Cayla Dohey.
And today we're going to talk about using sound walls to encode irregular words within the classroom.
Wait a couple minutes.
Would you like me to introduce you ladies?
Yes, please.
Okay. It's all right. Hi, and welcome to this Patent Literacy Symposium session called Using Sound Walls to Encode Irregular Words. My name is Jeannie Hertzler, and I am joined by my colleague, Dr. Stacy Cherney. We're excited to facilitate this session for everyone, but before we start, we have those few housekeeping items we need to remind the participants of. So you can access the presenter handouts for this session and the presenter bios at the conference schedule on the Patent website, and the link is provided in the chat. So Stacy, would you mind? Thank you. And just as a reminder, the session will be recorded and is about 75 minutes in length, which will include a time at the end for questions and answers. To access the closed captioning, click on the icon CC Live Transcript on the Zoom control panel. And if you would happen to experience any technology issues, please go to the technical support guides area above the schedule on the symposium page. This format is actually webinar. So because it's a webinar, your microphones have been muted and your video feature has been turned off. So not to worry if there's noise in your home background or wherever you're attending from. And remember that we would love for you to tweet out or share on social media all you are learning from here at the Literacy Symposium. The hashtag for the symposium is #PatentLit 2022. Thanks for putting that in the chat, Stacy. And now we'd like to introduce to you the River Valley School District team.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Caitlin Martin.
And I'm Cayla Dohey.
And we are going to be using sound walls to encode irregular words within the classroom. And we hope that this information in our presentation helps you to build instructional strategies within your own classroom. We've been using these with our students, and we've seen considerable growth using these strategies in our classroom.
Some of the objectives that you will learn and take away from today are to develop a deeper understanding of how sound walls can be used to teach irregular words, learn how orthographic mapping and sound walls are connected in order to help students spell those irregular words and store them in their long-term memory, and then also how to use lip pictures, sound spelling cards, and other sound wall strategies in order to encode. The presentation overview. So the first thing, again, will be sound walls. And then we'll be moving on to orthographic mapping using heart words. After that, we will explain some of our teaching routines that we have used and we found success with. And then we will end it off with how to help parents at home as well.
So on the next slide is our I can statement, something that we use pretty regularly in our classrooms. And after all this is said and done, we hope that you're going to be able to do these things in your own classroom. So first is I can use orthographic mapping with a sound wall in order to help my students spell irregular words. I can use picture connections on my sound spelling cards to cue my students to specific spelling patterns, and I can provide parents with support at home.
So the first thing we'll be digging into is our sound walls.
Here you're going to see a picture of a sound wall. This isn't one that we particularly use in our classroom, but this is the consonant part of the sound wall. Sound walls are, however, a huge part of our classroom, and we spend a lot of time talking about how those sounds are produced with our mouths and how we can relate it directly back to our sound wall using the kid lip pictures as well as the sound spelling cards that are on that wall. Some of our sound spelling cards have parts that are hidden, and we call those peekaboo parts. And with those peekaboo parts, we can access them if we come to an irregular spelling pattern and then cover them back up, because most of the time those irregular spelling patterns are going to be shown in later grades. So this relates directly maybe to kindergarten, first or second grade, where they haven't seen all of those spelling patterns just yet. I try to make it a big deal to students that when they see some of those hidden words, that they're going to be seeing them again in first grade, and that they get really excited about learning those new things that we haven't yet talked about in kindergarten.
So this is just an example of what the vowel valley would look like. So prior to that, we showed you the consonant, and this is an example of just all the vowels. In kindergarten, like she said, we don't have all the cards exposed. As we come across the sound spelling that is new, we will add it to the wall. And then this here is a personal sound wall. So this is something that, you know, you can either create on your own. You can take a picture of your own wall that you have in your classroom and then just print those, laminate them, and provide them to the students. I think this is great to either just like keep in a folder for the kids, or as mentioned, you can laminate and have them sitting at, you know, your back table and your small group table, different things like that. Because sometimes the kids are uncomfortable. You know, maybe they don't want to get up in front of everyone and go up to the actual sound wall in your class, or, you know, it's easier for them just if they have it right in front of them. So this is a cute little thing that we like to do. And then again, here's the consonant portion of that, just an example. And you could even find these on Teachers Pay Teachers pre-made for you.
So the next is a 3D sound wall. And we all know how much students love touching items and seeing items and feeling them. And using a 3D sound wall, you can help build those connections for students. So not only can they see the item, touch the item, it's then associated with a sound spelling card or spelling pattern. And it helps to really build concrete connections for students and help them store it in their long-term memory.
So next we have a quote here from Marjorie Batari, and it says that speaking is natural and it's something we can learn to do by being immersed in language. However, reading is not natural, so that is why it needs to be taught explicitly, systematically, and use our multisensory approaches to really help kids learn. So a little bit about what sound walls specifically are. So sound walls are organized by speech sounds rather than just the letters. They're based on the student's point of view, which makes it really, really nice for the kids. They're able to be used independently by students rather than depending on the teacher. So again, when I say student point of view, what I mean is they sound out the word, and then they focus on the sounds that they hear, specifically what they hear and how their own mouths are moving. They can locate the sound spelling pattern on the sound wall independently then, but with a word wall, the teacher must introduce each word separately, right? And it's based on the diverse and specific spelling of the word. So it must be teacher-led, and this all decreases the student independence. We want our students to be independent. We want them to have that feeling, the confidence that they can do it on their own, which is what's so great about sound walls.
Sound walls have a focus on phoneme and articulation rather than letters, and they're helpful in transferring skills to multiple words rather than focusing on one single word, which a word wall would do. So when we use our sound walls in the classroom, we take a word by hearing it first, and then we break it apart into the sounds that the students are hearing in that word. When they come to a part of that word that is unfamiliar to them, they can then go to the mirror and see what their mouth is doing in order to produce that sound that's unfamiliar. Take that information from the mirror up to the sound, to the picture cards, the lip picture cards, and then use that information with the sound spelling patterns. And this all is not a very labored process because the students become super familiar with it. They use that mirror, they find what they need on the sound wall, then they go back and figure out what that sound is and how they can use it to spell, the sound spelling cards to spell.
So how do we help students learn those tricky words or the sight words? And the answer is sound walls. So the English language has 44 speech sounds or phonemes, right? Is 26 letters to represent those sounds and phonemes. And there's over 200 different ways to spell those sounds. So we must provide students with tools to help them learn these 200 different spellings of sounds. And research proves that flashcards or memorization alone are not the correct tools. So we need to provide them with the correct ones, such as like the sound wall. So did you know that a sound wall helps us match our speech sounds or phonemes to the letters, graphemes that represent those sounds? They also help students identify the different spelling patterns in words and give them a tool they can use in order to apply different spellings to new words. Sound walls are helpful to have pictures of the mouths next to each sound in order to show students what their own mouths should look like when producing the specific sounds. So the mouth pictures can help students put more meaning and more of a connection to sounds in their spelling, which in turn will help this information become stored in their long-term memories. Multi-sensory approaches and meaning are also so very important when helping our students learn. So when we're introducing the sounds on a sound wall, there are some things that we like to do within our classrooms and with our groups. And how we introduce the sounds on the sound wall, we ask 5 important questions. So 1, what are my lips doing? So for example, when you're providing the student with the letter P, how are their lips pushing together when they say P, right? So have them really focus on that. What are your lips specifically doing? Provide them with their own little mini mirrors or, you know, how Caitlin has in her classroom, a large mirror that they can go up and look in, different things like that. What are your teeth doing? So an example would be for SH, the sh, how are your teeth pressing in your mouth? Tongue, what is your tongue doing in your mouth? So TH, the digraph TH, the voiceless sound. What is your tongue doing? Is it pressing off of your teeth? Is it in the back of your mouth, on the roof of your mouth? Different things like that. Sorry. And continued. Number 4, what is my throat and voice box doing? So you want them to put their hand on their throat. I have them grab here or put their hand like this. Is it a quiet or noisy sound? We also can call that voiced or voiceless sounds. So TH, you can tell them that if it is voiceless, like the word, I'm sorry, if it's voiced, we have the word that. And they can feel it. Say you feel it in your throat, it's voiced. You feel it in your voice box, making the sound. But then if you give them the word think, they're not feeling it. So we say it's a quiet sound, right? It's voiceless, so they're not feeling it. So having them do all those different things, again, feeling it, touching, looking in the mirrors. And then lastly, filling the air. So how is the air flowing? Something I like to do for letters such as P is I have them hold their hand up and say, feel the puff of air in your hand, catch the puff of air. For H, I say H is hot. We're feeling the hot air in our hand. So different things like that, getting them engaged, and it's just fun for them too. They enjoy doing it.
So in this next slide, you are going to see the feel the sound first. You're going to see an example of how we use the mirrors in the classroom, how we feel the sounds, and how we figure out what parts of our mouth are making those sounds. We're aware that the audio isn't currently working. We're going to see if we can get it figured out. If not, I can walk you through what's happening. Ms. Hertzler.
Are you able to reshare with sound? Maybe that little box wasn't checked when you shared your presentation.
Okay, so in front of us, we have a mirror. So I want you to say this same sound again, the V sound into the mirror, and see what your mouth is doing for me. What did you see? When you picked up the mirror and you looked, what did you see your mouth doing? Yeah, I saw your face doing that. So tell me more, like, what's your tongue doing?
Vibrating.
It's vibrating, that's right. Look in that mirror again. See if your tongue is in your mouth or outside of your mouth.
Out.
It's kind of out a little bit, you got it. So another thing, you said that your tongue was vibrating, right? So was it a loud sound or a quiet sound?
Loud.
It's definitely a loud sound, isn't it? So this spelling, this digraph actually has two sounds it makes. It can make the loud sound, which we have here, or it could make the quiet sound. And the quiet sound is, can you try that? Look in the mirror and see if your mouth is in the same place. Is it in the same place? No. Look again, I think it is. It's in the same place, but instead of it being a noisy sound this time, it's being a quiet sound. We're going to talk specifically, though, about our noisy sound, TH, our V, that one that vibrates. Can you do that again for me? Nice job. So in the next video you're going to see is one of our sound spelling routines. And at our district, we used ECRI, which is the Enhanced Core Reading Instruction Routines, and it helps to supplement our series of journeys. I was fortunate enough to be a part of an ECRI training with Jess Searles, who's also presenting at the conference today, and have witnessed the success of our students with the use of these routines in our classroom. You'll see me using this with only one student in the video. However, I use this during my whole group instruction. Spelling cards. We're going to go over our picture, our sound, and then our spelling. You ready? Okay. Card.
Or
Sound. Spelling.
H.
Card.
Itchy.
Sound. Spelling.
I.
Card.
Zebra.
Sound.
Z.
Spelling.
Z.
Good. Card.
Leaf.
Try again.
Feather.
Sound. Spelling.
TH.
TH, good. So when I heard you say this is actually a feather, right? And when we talk about our word feather, our card feather, we have a V sound. Can you try that for me? Did you see where Mrs. Martin's tongue is? Yeah, we're gonna take a look at that in 1 second. So we'll come back to that one. Card.
Up.
Sound.
Up.
Spelling.
You.
Very nice. So in the video there, you saw us using that routine, and typically what would happen prior to us just going through all those sounds, I would explicitly teach each one of those cards, and that's also part of the ECRI routine. But because he was already familiar with a lot of those sounds and those spelling cards, we just zipped right through each one of those. Okay, so in front of us, we have a... So we're gonna go over our...
Okay, so we have this on here from the University of Florida Literacy Institute, and this is just a suggested scope and sequence for teaching the graphing phoneme correspondences on your sound wall, how you would just introduce those. So the reason we included this is because the work of UFLI is deeply rooted in the science of reading, which we know is extremely important. Also, this is linked on our Padlet. So you can go to this website from our Padlet, and on there you can find different webinars, there's digital apps you can use, and then there's a resource hub, and much more. There's a lot of stuff for dyslexia, lots of readings, just great information. But if you take a look at this, group one, starting with your consonants and your short vowels, and then moving on to different roles such as the floss roll, your consonant digraphs, and then it progresses onto the more difficult grapheme phoneme correspondences as you go down. So this is just a great resource to use. And again, this is just more, and it shows how you progress down.
So as a quick review, let's talk about what are the 5 important questions to ask students when introducing a sound wall. And you can go ahead and in the chat type, what are those important questions? Give you a couple of seconds. You can go back to our slide on the questions. We got one, what is your mouth doing? What are your lips doing?
And teeth. Good. Air flowing, teeth.
Is it voiced or unvoiced?
Good.
Nice job. So for the next part of our presentation, we're going to go into orthographic mapping using heart words.
So orthographic mapping, we took a lot of research from Dr. Airy. She is a researcher and a distinguished professor. And she stated that orthographic mapping involves the formation of letter-sound connections to bond spellings, pronunciations, and meaning of specific words in memory. So orthographic mapping is how students learn to read those irregularly spelled words by sight and to spell words from memory and gain vocabulary knowledge from print. She also describes this as a sequence of overlapping phases, each characterized by the strongest type of connection that links the spellings of words to the way they are pronounced in our memory. And orthographic mapping is enabled with the use of phonemic awareness skills and grapheme phoneme knowledge. So recent findings indicate that it is to support sight word reading. It's facilitated when beginners are taught about articulatory features of phonemes and when grapheme phoneme relations are taught with letter embedded picture mnemonics. So these features are what we see specifically on the sound wall. So another quote from Dr. Airy is that because spelling sound connections are retained in memory, they impact the processing of phonological constitutes and phonological memory for words.
So studies have shown that explicitly teaching phonemic awareness concepts helps students to increase their word reading and spelling. So at our district, we use a program called Heggerty, and that program has a lot to do with teaching phonemic awareness skills explicitly. There's a lot of, first you give them a cue, you show them an example, and then they go through a bunch of prompts of that same skill to help build word recognition and explicit teaching strategies. A lot of teachers tend to direct students' attentions to the sounds that they hear in words, but science is showing that the sounds processed by our ears are less central than articulatory gestures produced by the movements that our mouth makes when we're saying the words. So kind of relating back to our sound walls, the more that we're able to use mirrors to see what our mouths are doing and the airflow is definitely going to help build those connections and make them super strong for students. And according to the motor theory of speech perception, our articulatory gestures are what are represented in the phonemes in our brain rather than the acoustic features. So just like we mentioned before, when we say a word prior to seeing it, and then we feel those parts of the word, it's definitely helpful to hear it as opposed to seeing it first.
So sounds are ephemeral, which means that they last for a very short time. Once they are heard, they eventually disappear. Our mouth positions, though, are more tangible, so they're perceptible by touch, unlike the sounds. We can feel these. We can feel them, we can view them in the mirror, and we can even analyze them as learners. So like we showed in the video, the student was able to see his mouth. He was able to talk about what he was feeling in his mouth. And again, those were all the tangible parts, which is very important.
For phoneme grapheme instruction, Boyer and Airy showed that young students trained in phoneme segmentation using letter tiles and pictures with those articulatory gestures, for example, cards with mouth pictures performed better than those in a control group that were letters only. And this is why it's so useful to use sound walls and have students utilize them in the classroom. It's important to note that words with spelling patterns that would be considered irregular from a grapheme phoneme correspondence tend to shift as those patterns are learned. So for example, in kindergarten, the long A spelling pattern for the word say with that AY spelling is not yet taught. We talk about long vowels, but we're not yet into understanding all the different spelling patterns that go with them. Once, however, they're in first grade and that spelling pattern has been taught, it's no longer considered an irregular word part.
So phoneme grapheme mapping. This is a research-based activity. It helps early and transitional readers build word recognition skills. Phonemes are the sounds we hear in the words, and the graphemes are the letters that represent the sounds. But phoneme grapheme mapping can help a child it can help them build their decoding skills. This will increase fluency in multisyllabic words. It will increase their confidence in spelling, and this increases fluency with the more complex text found in grades 4 to 6. So this all here shows that this is all connected if you know anything about Starborough's rope. And it just shows that all of these things are all connected to help us read and comprehend.
So the next part of our presentation is going to be about heart word magic, and this can be found on Really Great Reading, one of the resources that we use regularly when we try to plan our heart parts for our words. This video, for example, is one that you're going to see how Really Great Reading can be used in the classroom. On this part of the video, Really Great Reading is going to go over how they decide which parts of the words become heart parts of the words. Again, different parts of this are going to be useful, and I'll show you an example of it in a second.
In this unit, we will learn 5 more heart words. Remember, heart words are words we will learn and know by heart. Some of these words have tricky parts that we have to remember, but we can read some of the parts using our phonics knowledge. The heart words in this unit are may, no, now, came, and out. Let's look at them now.
May, a, may. We need to remember the second part of this word by heart. Is spelled with the letter M. A is spelled with the letters A-Y. A, M-A-Y, may.
No. N-O. No.
So just like we had mentioned before, in kindergarten, students are going to know that the sound in May is spelled with an M, and that the heart part is that A part. During this time, I would flick up my sound spelling cards and I would show them that this is the picture on that sound spelling card, which happens to be an apron in our case. And then I would do the peekaboo where I would lift up that part of the sound spelling card that I had covered because we hadn't yet talked about that. And then from there, they would get really excited just because they are learning something that we haven't yet covered, and they're going to see it again in first grade. So it's all about kind of making it kind of magical for students, and the fact that they want to know more, and they're so into finding out what that next component is that they're going to learn.
Okay, so this is just another example from really great reading that I would like to use with my kiddos. If you go onto this, you can print these worksheets out for your kids for free. And then also there is a script for you for what specifically you can say. I like that not only are you teaching the tricky part of irregular words, but there's some rhyming incorporated into it. The kids get to color the little heart in above the tricky part. So this is just a great way. You can even use this in centers just to get the kids engaged and doing this independently as well. And then something from really great reading that we like to do is highlight the tricky to make it sticky. So that's something we say to our kids, and it makes them laugh a little bit. Obviously it helps them remember this little trick because of the cute little saying that they like. So one easy way to help students focus on and remember the parts of the tricky heart words they need to remember by heart is to simply have them highlight the part of the word that is tricky, which is the irregular part of the word, such as the letter A and the word what, right? So we would talk about the sounds in what are what. If they know the digraph WH already, then the A would be the only tricky part because it's not what, we say it's what. So then they highlight it, and my kids absolutely love highlighters. I don't know about yours, but we get the highlighters out. It's like a reward. So they get super excited about it and they enjoy this activity.
So the more deeply and thoroughly a student understands a word, the more likely he or she is to recognize it, spell it, define it, and use it appropriately in speech and writing. When we would do whole group writing, I would dictate a sentence to students. And if they didn't know how to spell one of those irregular words, they would go straight to the sound wall. They would look at their pronunciation of the word in our mirror, and then they would relate it directly up to those picture cards. And then from those picture cards, go down to the sound spelling cards and figure out what sound and what spelling I need to use for that. With the use of those the lip cards, and having those feelings in their mouth about how that sound is produced, it definitely makes it more concrete for students. After several times of doing this, they no longer needed to go up to that sound wall because they had put it into their memory for how they could write it, and that they wouldn't need to make sure that they spelled it correctly because it was in there.
So a little tip with heart words, it is most beneficial if kids do not see the word before they're mapping it. The reason this is because when kids see the word first, that can promote memorization. We want to steer away from that, right? So we want them to hear the word. We want them to articulate it. We want them to feel it in their mouths. We want them to segment the sounds. So can they tap the sounds out? And then we want them to connect the sounds to the letter and write it with the word. So again, we're trying to get away from just, the flashcards, just memorizing it, already seeing it. We want them to map the word out on their own.
So another great resource is Sortigories on Heartwords. And this is just one that you can find access to on our Padlet. And it's another great resource for mapping out those tricky words.
Okay, so let's pop it out. So I am sure that many of your students or kids are obsessed with poppets. Our kids collect them. It's so exciting for them. Even my 4-year-old at home just loves poppets. So not only are they good fidget toys, but they can also be incorporated into your reading instruction. So something I like to do is to use them as a multisensory approach whenever we're teaching those irregular words. Some of you may have seen this before, but what we do is we would say the word. So for example, if our word is they, we're going to say it. We can have those mirrors in front of us, talk about our mouths, different things like that. Is it voiced, TH, unvoiced, different things like that. And then we pull out our poppet. So a lot of, curriculums or interventions, a lot of times they'll say, pop your fingers up for the sounds. I know some, they say to tap the sounds because you're feeling that pressure on your finger. So that's what's great about the poppet is whenever they're popping the poppet, they're getting that pressure, which is going to be that complete multisensory approach that's going to connect into their brains. So popping the sounds in they, a, so they would pop two things down, right? And then mapping it, which means we're connecting now those sounds and we're writing it down with the graphemes, right? So we're putting our TH and then that EY. I would then explain though, and we would explicitly teach the EY is making that A sound. That's the tricky part, right? So they map it and then we rewrite it as a whole. So we want it all to flow. So THEY, they. And then we're going to use our fingers and we're going to look at the word and we're going to slide our finger across and read the word as a whole. When we're done with that, we can do some other multisensory things with it as well. They can use it in a sentence just so they have a full understanding of it. But again, the poppet is great. They love it. It's fun, something that you can incorporate into your class as well.
So on this next slide, you're going to see a video of Cayla working with a student through this entire process, just to make it a little bit more tangible.
So we are going to do another word, and our word is going to be his. Can you say his? Say the word first for me. Just say his. His. Good. Okay, let's stretch it on our arm. Ready? His. His. Very good. Now I want you to go ahead and pop the sounds you hear in his. Very good. Okay. Can you tell me what the first sound you heard in his was? His.
H.
Good. What sound? Very good. Can you find that letter for me? Good. We're going to go ahead and put that there. That's the first sound in his. What was the next sound you heard in his?
I.
Very good. Which letter says I? Good. Our vowel. Every word has to have at least one vowel to make the word talk, right? Our short I. His. What do you hear at the end of his? What sound? Can you tell me what sound we hear at the end of Oh, you hear the Z sound, right? But guess what? In the word his, it's actually the letter S. That's the tricky part. We have to know that in the word his, the S is making the Z sound. Do you know why?
Yeah,
Why?
because the S says Z.
Okay, sometimes the S says the Z sound. And the reason why is because I want you to hold your throat and I want you to say the I sound. Say I. Now I want you to hold your throat and say another vowel. Say ah.
Ah.
How about eh? Do you feel it in your throat? They're loud sounds, right? Now hold your throat and make the S sound. Say S. Did you feel that? No. S. My throat's not vibrating. So that is not a loud sound. That's a quiet sound. But do you know what? S wants to fit in. He wants to fit in with that letter I. And he wants to be loud like him. So in your class, sometimes some loud friends might want to hang out with the other loud friends. So S is going to all of a sudden try to be loud so he can fit in with I, okay? So now make the Z sound, say Z. Do you feel it vibrate? Okay, so Z makes the loud sound. So S is going to pretend that he is a Z so he can fit in with I and be loud, okay? So that is the part we have to know. His. Let's go ahead and write it down here. What's the first sound we hear in his?
H.
Good. Very good. What was the next sound you hear in his? Good. Go ahead and write it. Good. What is the last sound we hear in his? Good, but we have to know it's actually what letter? S, trying to be loud, right? So he can fit in with I. Very good. That's the tricky part. So we're going to highlight the tricky so we can make it sticky. So go ahead and highlight the S. to help make it stick. Good, that is the tricky part. Now, if we take a look at our card here, what is my picture?
Zebra.
A zebra. And we can see that zebra, the Z sound, can either be a Z or sometimes at the end after a short vowel, he wants to fit in with that vowel. So it can be an S, right? Good. So underneath our S in his, we're going to go ahead and draw our, what are we going to draw?
Zebra.
Our zebra. Good. So go ahead and draw your
tail.
zebra. He's missing his tail, but your zebra can be special and have his tail. So go ahead and make your zebra. Very nice. Good. Okay. Tell me the sounds in this word again. Ready?
His.
Tell me the sounds. What's the sound?
Is.
Word.
His.
Very good.
So you got to see how even though, our focus was the sound spelling and finding the heart word magic, he still wanted to figure out like, oh, the zebra doesn't have a tail. So that's what he took from that. So on here, we have this also on our Padlet, which you guys will have access to. It is a sight word success story, is on page 721 and 722. So again, the article is just rethinking sight words. So if you go to those specific pages, there is the actual success story. So it's really good. And it's just basically the strategy that I just showed in that video. The teacher does that as an intervention with students, and it shows that at the beginning of the intervention, students were only able to read an average of 3.8 words out of 10, but then after incorporating something like that, they were able to read 8.6 words out of 10, and which was over twice as many after receiving the intervention. And one student who had been able to read only 1 word out of 10 before the intervention was now able to read all 10 words. So it's something really great to read. And it also has step-by-step ways to do the little intervention with your students as well. So next, we're just going to do a quick review. And question number 2 just says, what is one way to help students encode sight words? Is it highlight the tricky to make it sticky? Highlight the consonant to make it important? Highlight the heart to make it the sweet part? Or highlight the vowel to make it a wow? And you can put your answer in the chat. And then the second question is, phoneme graphing mapping is a research-based activity that helps early and transitional readers build phonographic or phonemic and grapheme correspondence, build word recognition skills, build vocabulary, and build fluency. And this one's a little tricky. What we're looking for, what's the first thing that kind of happens? And you can go back and check out our phoneme grapheme mapping slide to help you find that answer. So next up is some of our teaching routines. So encoding irregular words using a sound wall. I found this quote, her name is Dropping Knowledge with Heidi. You can find her on social media, but she really has amazing strategies that she uses. So definitely check her out. I've learned so much from her. She is very science of reading based. So a quote that she had, so originally it was sight words can't be sounded out, you just have to memorize them, right? That's why they're called sight words. That's what we were always previously taught. We were told flashcards memorize.
But now with our research, we have learned that sight words can be sounded out. You just have to map them, orthographically map these words. So that was nice to add into our presentation.
So next is making the most of our phonics lessons. What we want to do is connect high frequency words with our sound spelling cards and then teach mini lessons about those spelling patterns. And this is going to have students create those concrete connections with the word and the spelling of the word. Here you're going to see a picture of one of our ECRI routines that we do, as well as our sound spelling cards, and then some of the materials that we use and post in our rooms to help build those connections for students. So for example, for the word say, the heart part of our word is the AY part in the word. In kindergarten, we haven't yet learned that part, that AY, the spelling AY says A. So in order to build that connection for students, we use our sound spelling cards with those pictures to build those connections. So you'll see underneath that part of the AY, we have the picture of the apron, which directly relates back to our sound spelling card. So if the students don't always necessarily remember what the spelling is, they can say, oh, I remember that it was an A sound, and I know that on our card, our A is our apron. So I can go directly to that card and then find which spelling pattern might be helpful for me. However, one thing that I want to keep reiterating is the fact that some of these irregularly spelled sounds in kindergarten are not that way in first grade. They're going to learn, explicitly be taught that those are some different spelling patterns that we have for the A sound, the long A sound. So irregular words can change. Heart words can no longer be heart words. They can change into more phonetic words. So restructuring the way that we use restructuring the way high frequency words are taught makes reading and spelling more accessible to all students. In this video, you're going to see a mini lesson on spelling patterns and the connections to those spelling sounds. Pop the sounds. Watch Mrs. Martin. O, V, Your turn. Let's do it together. Nice. Let's talk about that first sound that we hear. That first sound is what?
O.
O. If we were going to write that, what letter do you see in your head?
A normal O.
A normal O. Good. And the next sound that we have is what? Eyes here. O, V, We hear a V sound. Good. And when you look at that, if you think about that letter and sound, what letter do you see?
Over.
What letter do you see here?
A V.
A V, yeah. So we have O, V, This last sound is what? Tell me the sound you hear. Right? And we have talked about the sound like R, but R says not right? So the last sound that we have is the sound, and we have a new card for the sound. We have a bird. Say the word bird.
Bird.
Oh, nice. I heard you tell me each one of the sounds in bird. Did you hear an sound in bird? You did. So that would just be a mini lesson of us going over how we would use and explicitly teach with our sound spelling cards. And again, oh, how things have changed, just as Cayla had mentioned, that high frequency words can be categorized into heart words. We're no longer teaching by just having a whole word and memorizing it. We're taking our high frequency words and we're breaking them down into the parts that we hear, and then we can categorize them and make them into something that's more concrete for students. Just as I had said before, heart words can change if they started off as a heart word and then go into first grade and that rule is being taught, then it no longer is a heart word for them and it becomes a decodable word. Here are some lists of high frequency words that can be grouped with unusual spelling patterns. I know Cayla did the word his with our student. We could put is into that category, as and has. Some of the words that end with a V, no words in the English language end in V, so it always has to be followed by that E, so that's a specific pattern that we could use to teach students. So making those visual connections to spelling patterns, pictures can increase the relevancy of a sight word and children's motivation to learn it. They can also provide an extra cue that assists learners in determining the word's meaning. So having both that visual and verbal input when learning sight words can help learners form a stronger memory trace, deepening their association between the sight word and its meaning. So that's why you'll see on our card here that we have a picture from our sound spelling cards that is then translated directly back into some of the cards that they would practice with on the regular. Visual connections to spelling patterns. Again, those visual connections are on those cards explicitly, and those cards I put on my door, and they help us with transition time. So you're always getting your class ready to go to the next specials class or to lunch, and not everybody's ready at the same time. So in order to get students to kind of focus and still be learning while they're waiting for their peers to get in line, I have these words posted on our door. And I will go through and I'll point to a word and we'll talk about what the picture is, what the heart part of the word is, and then I'll ask students to say the word. And this helps students who aren't necessarily ready get in line. It helps also with that repetition of seeing that word over and over and over again. And then sometimes we'll also use those words orally in sentences. I'll have a specific student say the word and then use it in a sentence. I always give them that little bit of wait time and think time to come up with an idea. And sometimes even I'll have them share with the partner behind them what their sentence is. And also whenever they're saying the word out loud, I make sure that it is a choral response, not just one student saying that word.
So in this next video, you'll see the student using sound spelling cards and sound walls to help build those connections. So the first thing is segmenting the sounds in the word, in which we haven't yet learned the spelling pattern for. Next, we'll check out how our mouths are making that sound and what sound spelling picture card goes with it. And then lastly, drawing the picture from the sound spelling card below the heart part.
Okay, Owen, you ready? We're gonna say the word over. Say the word over for me. Oh, you did all the sounds in the word. I like that, but let's just say the word over.
Over.
Good. Now on our hands, let's pop the sounds. Watch Mrs. Martin. O, v, Your turn. Let's do it together. Nice. Let's talk about that first sound that we hear. That first sound is what?
O.
O. If we were going to write that, what letter do you see in your head?
A normal O.
A normal O, good. And the next sound that we have is what? Eyes here. O, v, We hear a v sound, good. And when you look at that, if you think about that letter and sound, what letter do you see?
Over.
What letter do you see here?
A V.
A V, yeah. So we have O, V, This last sound is what? Tell me the sound you hear. Right? And we have talked about the sound like R, but R says R, not right? So the last sound that we have is the sound, and we have a new card for the sound. We have a bird. Say the word bird.
Bird.
Oh, nice. I heard you tell me each one of the sounds in bird. Did you hear an sound in bird? You did. So that is part of our word for over.
Are we gonna put it on our cards?
Yeah, we're going to put it on our cards and our sound wall. So this is our word over. Watch Mrs. Martin. I'm going to spell it. O-V-E-R. Can you spell it with me? O-V-E-R. Good. Can you spell it by yourself?
O-V-E-R.
Fantastic. Can we air write it together? You ready? O-V-E-R. Nice job. Let's do it on our arm. Ready? Let's slide it. Over.
Over.
O
O
V
V
E R. Word?
over.
Very nice. And let's write it on our bumpy board, please. Go ahead and you just use your finger. Say the words.
O V E R.
Very nice job. Now let's take our card and let's go ahead and write on our card the word over. Very nice. Now for the part that we're not sure of yet, we knew that the O said O, the V said V, and the part is the part that we just weren't sure of just yet. Let's put a heart above those two letters, E-R. Go ahead and underline the E-R and put a heart above it. Nice. And the picture that we're going to draw this time is what?
Bird.
A bird. Go ahead and draw me a bird on there underneath that sound.
So for that one, you just got to see how we were introducing it, and I do this whole group as well as in a small group, but mostly whole group. And I take those same exact concepts and skills and I just apply them to a whole group setting. We do it with a very direct instruction approach. It's me doing it and then them doing it, and then we go on to the next step.
So some other multisensory connection approaches that you can use that we like to do is anything that is Orton Gillingham based. So introducing the sound spelling rule by connecting it with 3D objects. So an example, if you're introducing the oi sound, the oi rule, it can be introduced using 3D objects such as a toy. You can have a boy, an oyster, or a cowboy. And that also connects to that 3D sound wall. You can kind of introduce those sounds using that 3D sound wall. They can fill the object and then you can place it on the sound, your 3D sound wall, different things like that. Write the words in sand or glass beads, shaving cream, etc. While they're doing that, have the kids spelling and saying the word or the letters out loud. Tapping the sounds and then letter names to spell the word on your arm, which we saw Caitlin do in the video. Write the word using a red crayon and place over top of a bumpy or textured screens in order to fill the texture of the letters in the word while you're locking in the word. And then you can go back with your finger over top of those bumpy letters as well and fill that.
Next, you're going to see a video of us using the glass beads in the classroom.
Eva.
So just going back to the sound walls in our own classroom, this is an example of one that was in my room. And at the beginning of the year, you're going to see students' names on this wall. We would talk about how those, their names related directly back to the sound spelling cards and the picture cards and the mouth cards. And that kind of gave them a vested interest in the sound wall. You're also going to see two parts on the sound wall that are incorrectly labeled. You're going to have the word this, and it's on the thumb, and it shouldn't be there. It should be with a feather. And you're also going to see the word Oliver in the open with the opening of the can. Students have access to this sound wall at all times. So at times, apparently, they had moved the cards from their designated location to a location that they thought was more appropriate. In this instance, I would make sure that the students recognized there was a problem, and we would talk about why they shouldn't be in that particular part of the sound wall, and then we'd move it back to the part that it actually belonged in. So next, you're going to see an example routine, and it is just a step-by-step process of how I use my sound spelling cards and my irregular words and my sound wall all in one particular place to help encode those irregular words. And it just helps to build student understanding, and it helps with writing and spelling of helping students understand and become better writers and spellers.
Which then, since spelling is so important and all connected, we wanted to add some details about spelling. So researchers have estimated that spellings of nearly 50% of English words are predictable based on sound letter correspondences that can be taught, that can be taught. And also another 34% of words are predictable except for one sound. So 84% of words can be predictable. So it's important to know. And why is spelling so important anyways? The correlation between spelling and reading comprehension is so high. They both depend on the common denominator, which is proficiency with language.
So finding words in text, we use decodable readers at our school, and they're part of our series, which is Journeys. With those decodable texts, we go in and highlight the sounds in each words and then use our irregular words within those decodable texts. So it helps build the fluency of seeing those words not only in isolation, but also with within text. Next, you're going to see student spelling samples. We'll skip the video because I know we're running out of time, but it'll be accessible. It was just showing how the student was using the sound spelling cards on the wall and then incorporating it into their writing. And you'll see here, there's an example of his writing, and the word "the" was the word that we used. And one thing that I thought was really neat about that particular video was the fact that he had recognized the word "is," and he no longer needed to go up to that sound spelling wall to build those connections. He had built that automaticity from just doing it over and over and over again, that he no longer needed it.
So there are also, just if you take a look at the other things, there are student writing samples just to show from the beginning of the year to the end of the year how much progress our specific students made. There's data to show growth as well. So those are things that you can just look at on your own. There's a spelling menu, different homework things that you can send home that they can do with their parents. Different, like I said, different homework, different activities. Connecting school to home. There is a virtual learning at home idea that I used a lot with virtual learning that I really liked, and the kids, it was the orthographic mapping, the phoneme graphing mapping, different activity. And yeah.
For my my parent home connection, I always made sure that my parents knew what those spelling patterns were and how we were incorporating them into the classroom. So I always made sure to send home like a remind to them that explained explicitly what we were doing. But we want to thank you for listening today, and you can see the QR code to have access to the Padlet that we created.